For 15 years, he performed for millions. But every night, after the applause faded and the lights went dark, he stood alone in front of a mirror and spoke to someone who wasn't there. His bandmates thought it was a ritual. His manager thought it was madness. But the truth, captured on a hidden camera the week before he died, revealed a secret so devastating it would make sense of every tragic choice he'd ever made. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for your support. Thank you for subscribing. The dressing room mirror had seen everything. 15 years of triumph, 15 years of tears, 15 years of a man slowly coming undone. But on this particular November evening in 1991, the reflection staring back at Freddie Mercury was barely recognizable. The man who had commanded stadiums, who had made 70,000 people sing in unison, who had turned rock and roll into opera and opera into revolution, now weighed less than 100 pounds. His eyes, once sharp and defiant, had sunken into hollow shadows. His skin, once golden and radiant under stage lights, had turned the color of old parchment. But he stood there anyway, as he had every night for 15 years, and he began to speak. "Hello, Kashmira," he whispered to the empty glass. "I know you can't hear me. I know you've never heard me, but I'm going to keep talking to you anyway, just like I promised I would." The camera hidden in the corner of the room continued recording, placed there by his personal assistant, who had grown concerned about Freddie's declining health and increasingly strange behavior. She thought perhaps if she could show him the footage, he might finally seek help, might finally admit that something was terribly wrong. She had no idea what she was actually capturing. Freddie reached out and touched the mirror, his fingers trembling. "I sang for 130,000 people today at Wembley. Can you imagine? 130,000. They sang every word back to me. They knew every note. They loved me, Cash. They really did." His voice cracked. "But you know what's funny? I would trade all of them, every single one, just to hear you say my name one more time." He closed his eyes and the tears came, as they always did during these conversations. "I'm so tired. God, I'm so tired. But I can't stop. You know why I can't stop. To understand why Freddie Mercury spoke to a mirror every night, why he pushed himself to perform even as his body disintegrated, why he smiled through unimaginable pain. You have to go back to 1976. You have to go back to Zanzibar, to a small house on the coast where a girl named Kashmira lived with her grandmother. You have to go back to before Freddie was Freddie, when he was still Farrokh, still finding his voice, still believing that music could save him. Kashmira was his younger sister, though the world never knew she existed. Their parents had separated the children when they were young, sending Freddie to boarding school in India, while Kashmira remained in Zanzibar with their grandmother. It was meant to be temporary. It became permanent when political upheaval made travel impossible, when borders closed, when families were torn apart by forces beyond their control. Freddie was 17 when he last saw her. She was 12, standing on a dock, waving goodbye as his boat pulled away. "I'll come back for you," he had shouted across the widening gap of water. "I promise, Cash. I'll make something of myself, and I'll come back for you." She had smiled, that beautiful, innocent smile, and shouted back, "I'll wait for you, Farrokh. I'll wait forever if I have to." But forever came too soon. In 1976, when Freddie was finally successful enough, finally wealthy enough, finally powerful enough to bring her to London, he received a letter from Zanzibar. Kashmira had died 3 months earlier. Tuberculosis. She was 23 years old. The letter had been delayed, lost in the chaos of international mail, and by the time it reached him, she had already been buried for 90 days. The guilt nearly destroyed him. The knowledge that while he was singing in studios, recording albums, living in luxury, his sister was dying alone, calling for him, waiting for the brother who had promised to return. His bandmates found him in his apartment, surrounded by broken glass, his hands bleeding, screaming at his reflection in the shattered mirror. That was the night the ritual began. That was the night Freddie Mercury made a promise to a ghost. "I will sing for you," he had whispered to the broken glass. "Every night, every show, every note will be for you. I will become so big, so famous, so impossible to ignore that your name will echo through history. Not because of who you were, but because of what I will become in your memory. I will make the whole world sing for you, Kashmira, even if they don't know they're singing your name." And he did. God help him, he did. Every performance became a tribute. Every album was a monument. Every time Freddie pushed himself beyond human limits, every time he performed while sick, every time he refused to rest or slow down or take care of himself, he was keeping that promise. His bandmates noticed the change immediately. The Freddie they had known, the playful, wild, unpredictable artist, had been replaced by someone driven by something darker, something they couldn't understand. "Why do you do it?" Brian May had asked him once, backstage in Rio, after Freddie had performed with a 103-degree fever. "Why do you push yourself like this? We could have postponed. No one would have blamed you." Freddie had just smiled, that enigmatic smile that told nothing and everything. "Because someone is waiting for me to get it right," he had said. "And I'm not there yet." The mirror conversations continued for years. Every night, without fail, Freddie would stand alone and speak to his reflection, believing somehow that Kashmira could hear him across the veil of death. He told her about the shows, the cities, the faces in the crowd. He told her about the music he was creating, the boundaries he was breaking, the impossible things he was making possible with nothing but his voice and his will. "I met a boy today," he told the Mirror one night in 1985. "His name is Jim. He's kind, Cash. He's gentle. For the first time in years, I felt something other than this crushing guilt. But I can't let myself be happy, can I? Not when you never got the chance. Not when I failed you so completely." The disease came in 1987, though he kept it secret for years. HIV, the death sentence of the era, the plague that was taking so many of his friends. When the doctor told him, Freddie had felt an almost perverse sense of relief. Finally, he thought, finally, the punishment I deserve. But even then, he didn't stop performing. If anything, he pushed harder. The shows became more elaborate, more demanding, more physically impossible. He was running out of time, and he knew it. The promise had to be fulfilled. Kashmira had to be immortalized through his art, even if it killed him in the process. His friends grew desperate. They could see him wasting away, could see the light dimming in his eyes, but he refused to slow down. "Just one more album," he would say. "Just one more song. I'm not finished yet." In the studio, he would record take after take, even when his voice was failing, even when he could barely stand. The producers would beg him to rest, but he would shake his head. "Kashmira is listening," he would say, and they thought he was being poetic, thought he was speaking metaphorically about his audience or his legacy. They had no idea he was speaking about a ghost, about a girl who had died 15 years earlier, about a promise that had consumed his entire life. The hidden camera captured everything in those final weeks. It captured Freddie standing before the mirror, his body ravaged by disease, his voice reduced to a whisper, but still talking, still making his reports to the sister, who existed only in his memory and his guilt. "I recorded something today," he told the Mirror 3 weeks before he died. "It's called The Show Must Go On. I could barely breathe, Cash. My lungs are failing. But I took a shot of vodka, and I sang it in one take. Brian didn't think I could do it. He wanted to cancel the session, but I told him I could do it, and I did. For you. Always for you." He leaned his forehead against the glass, his breath fogging the surface. "I'm so close now. I can feel you nearby. Sometimes I think I hear your voice in the audience, singing along with the others. Are you there, Cash? Have you been there all along, watching me, waiting for me to finish what I started?" The bandmates found the tapes after he died. His personal assistant, racked with grief and guilt over the invasion of privacy, brought them the recordings, thinking perhaps they would provide some comfort, some insight into Freddie's final days. Instead, they found something that broke their hearts all over again. They watched 15 hours of footage, 15 hours of their friend speaking to a mirror, speaking to a sister they never knew existed, pouring out his heart to a ghost. They listened as he confessed his guilt over her death, his belief that if he had just worked harder, if he had just become successful faster, he could have saved her. They heard him make his promise night after night that he would make the world remember her through his music, even if no one ever knew her name. "That's why he never stopped," Roger Taylor said, his voice hollow with shock. "That's why he kept performing even when he was dying. He thought he owed it to her. He thought he was keeping a promise." Brian May couldn't speak. He just held the tape in his hands, thinking about all the times he'd urged Freddie to rest, to take care of himself, to slow down. He'd thought Freddie was being stubborn, being difficult, being the larger-than-life personality that had always defined him. He never knew about the crushing weight of guilt his friend had carried for 15 years, never knew about the promise that had driven him to destroy himself in the name of art. The final recording was made 2 days before Freddie died. He could barely stand, had to be helped to the mirror by his caretaker, but he insisted on making his nightly report. "I think this is it, Kashmira," he whispered, his voice barely audible on the tape. "I think I'm finally coming home to you. I've done everything I promised. I've made them sing. I've made them remember. Every stadium I filled, every record I broke, every impossible note I hit, it was all for you. The whole world knows my name now, and through my name, they'll know yours. Even if they don't realize it, every time they sing my songs, they're singing for you." He smiled, and for the first time in the recording, it was a genuine smile, not the performance smile he showed the world, but something real, something peaceful. "I'm not afraid anymore. I'm tired, so tired, but I'm not afraid. Because I kept my promise, didn't I? I did what I said I would do. I made something beautiful out of all this pain, and I made sure you would never be forgotten." He touched the mirror one last time, his fingertips leaving faint marks on the glass. "Wait for me just a little longer, Cash. I'm almost there. And this time, I won't be late. This time, I'll make it in time to say goodbye." Freddie Mercury died on November 24th, 1991, at the age of 45. The official cause was bronchial pneumonia resulting from AIDS. But those who watched the tapes, those who knew the truth, understood that he had died of something else entirely. He had died of a promise kept at any cost. He had died of guilt transformed into art. He had died of love that refused to accept the finality of death. The mirror from his dressing room was never used again. His personal assistant couldn't bring herself to throw it away, but she couldn't stand to look at it either, knowing what it had witnessed, what secrets it held. It was placed in storage, along with the tapes, hidden away from the world that loved Freddie but never truly knew him. But sometimes, late at night, the security guards at the storage facility swear they can hear singing, a voice, clear and powerful and heartbreakingly beautiful, echoing through the empty corridors. They say it sounds like someone practicing scales, warming up for a show, preparing for one more performance. And if you listened very carefully, if you stood very still and held your breath, you might hear something else beneath the singing. You might hear two voices instead of one, harmonizing perfectly, the way siblings do when they've sung together all their lives. You might hear laughter, joyful and free, the sound of a promise finally fulfilled. The world remembers Freddie Mercury as a legend, as one of the greatest performers who ever lived, as a man who pushed the boundaries of music and left behind a legacy that will echo for generations. They remember the voice, the showmanship, the incredible performances that defied belief. They remember the music that made them feel alive. But they don't know about Kashmira. They don't know about the mirror, about the nightly conversations, about the guilt and the love and the promise that drove every note he ever sang. They don't know that every time they sing along to his songs, every time they feel their spirits lifted by his voice, they are participating in a memorial service for a girl who died alone in Zanzibar, waiting for a brother who arrived 15 years too late. The tapes remain hidden, locked away by mutual agreement of those who knew the truth. They decided that some secrets should stay secret, that some pain is too private to share with the world. Freddie had always been intensely private about his personal life, and they would honor that privacy even in death. But Brian May kept one recording, the final one, the one where Freddie smiled and said he wasn't afraid anymore. Sometimes, when he's alone in his studio, working on music, trying to capture even a fraction of the magic that Freddie brought to every note, he plays that recording. He listens to his friend's voice, weak but still beautiful, still full of that ineffable quality that made him unique. And he understands now, in a way he never could when Freddie was alive, that every performance was an act of love. Every impossible note, every show performed through pain, every moment of genius that seemed to come from somewhere beyond human capability was driven by a love so powerful it transcended death itself. The mirror still sits in storage, covered with a white sheet, forgotten by the world. But if you could see it, if you could pull back that sheet and look into its depths, you might see something strange. You might see two reflections where there should be only one. You might see a man with a magnificent mustache and a woman with long, dark hair, standing side by side, finally reunited after all these years. And if you looked very closely, if you really paid attention, you would see that both of them are smiling. The show must go on, Freddie always said. And it does. His music plays on radio stations around the world. New generations discover his voice and fall in love with its power. Tribute bands keep his songs alive, performers try to capture even a fraction of his stage presence, and millions of people sing his lyrics without ever knowing the true story behind them. They don't know that when they sing Somebody to Love, they're singing about a girl named Kashmira who died waiting for her brother to keep his promise. They don't know that when they hear The Show Must Go On, they're hearing a man literally singing himself to death, pushing beyond human endurance because he believed someone was listening, someone who needed to hear him sing just one more time. They don't know that Freddie Mercury's greatest performance wasn't at Live Aid, wasn't at Wembley Stadium, wasn't any of the legendary shows that filled stadiums and broke records. His greatest performance was the one he gave every night in front of a mirror for an audience of one, singing for a sister who existed only in his memory and his guilt. That was the real Freddie Mercury. Not the flamboyant showman, not the legendary performer, not the musical genius, though he was all of those things. The real Freddie Mercury was a man who loved his sister so much that he destroyed himself trying to keep a promise to her ghost. A man who turned guilt into art, pain into beauty, and loss into a legacy that will outlive us all. The mirror knows, the mirror remembers. And late at night, when the world is quiet and still, the mirror whispers the truth that Freddie kept hidden for 15 years. Every note was for you, Kashmira. Every moment of glory, every triumph, every impossible achievement. It was all for you. And in the end, he kept his promise. The whole world sings now, and through their voices, your name echoes into eternity, even if they don't know they're speaking it. The show went on. The show always goes on. But now, finally, Freddie Mercury can rest. His promise is kept. His sister is remembered. And somewhere beyond the veil of death, two siblings are reunited at last, harmonizing perfectly, the way they always should have been able to do. The mirror stands in darkness, holding its secrets, keeping its vigil. And if you listen very carefully on quiet nights, you might hear what the mirror hears, what it has always heard, the sound of a man singing to someone he loves, the sound of a promise being kept, the sound of redemption found in the last possible moment, the sound of a legend being born from the ashes of tragedy, the sound of Freddie Mercury, finally at peace, finally home, finally free.